Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. So today's video slash podcast is going to be a review of AJ and the Queen, which premiered on Netflix today. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to label this yet, whether it's going to be a spoiler review or a non-spoiler review. I guess you'll know by the title. Yeah, I usually do videos with me actually in front of the camera I usually do my TV reviews and my film reviews in front of the camera, but I'm testing out a kind of more of a podcast format because I just feel like I'm a talking head anyway. But yeah, let me know how you feel about this podcast setup or whether you prefer video. Yeah, I think it's going to be a spoiler review. I feel like it's quite predictable anyway, but this is going to have some spoilers in it, I think. So just a kind of rundown for those who are just coming here maybe to like test the water, see if you want to commit to it. It's a 10 episode season. Each episode is pretty much an hour long. Basically, Rupaul is the main character in this thing, and she kind of plays a aging, heartbroken drag queen who's duped out of her life savings by a Latino Lothario and takes the child on tour with them. So in terms of audience-wise, who I think this is for, I'm somebody who does watch RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm a big fan of the show. I'm not entirely sure whether RuPaul Drag Race young fans whether this will necessarily go down well with fellow RuPaul Drag Race fans. I feel like this perhaps maybe is a story that maybe an older audience would enjoy more, because I feel like the entertainment is kind of geared towards a feel-good story. It is very heavy with the kind of sob story, that kind of sob story element that we often see in RuPaul's Drag Race, and less of, for me personally, obviously it's a comedy slash drama, but I feel like there's not really much engaging drama in this, and it feels more of a kind of good feel, almost poverty porn-ish. Kind of getting into the characters, obviously, it centers largely on RuPaul's character who plays Ruby slash Robert, and AJ, Amber Jasmine. And their relationship, obviously, it's a kind of like a father figure slash mother figure relationship. But I feel like their relationship lacked chemistry. I did not really see much chemistry between them, and I feel like their relationship to me wasn't very likable. It's not something that I would want, and I'm not really sure if their relationship was likable or inspirational or anything, because I just kind of felt like, why would anybody, especially in the situation that Ruby is in, she's just been swindled out of money, she's heartbroken, why would she want to take on the responsibility of somebody's badass child, especially when she's broke as hell, basically? Because it's not like AJ is, an easy child. They are a very difficult child to deal with. And I'm not really sure, obviously it's all in a fictional realm, but I feel like even in fictional realms, I feel like there has to be some elements of realism. And I just don't think that this relationship would be realistic in real life. I'm not sure if anyone would take on that responsibility that she has taken on. For those of you who watched it, what did you think of AJ and Ruby's relationship? Did you think it was cute? Did you think it was admirable? Did you not get it? I just don't think that anyone would want to deal with AJ's behavior, because there was a lot of the time where AJ pushed her over the edge, like when she said, if you don't take me this, if you don't take me there, I'm gonna tell people that you assaulted me, and I'm gonna get you put in prison or something like that, like threats like that. I just feel like at that stage, I'm fully just leaving you in the diner booth. Like, I'm actually taking care of you, I'm feeding you, making sure you're good out of the kindness of my heart, and you're making threats to me. I just didn't get it. And then also the extremes, like to the point where where Ruby is now committing crimes for this child that she barely knows. I just don't think that's realistic, to be honest. I don't think anyone would do that for a stranger's child, for a stranger, especially a stranger like AJ. But what did you guys think of that relationship? In terms of Ru's, I feel like everyone's going to scrutinize. I feel like there's always going to be comparisons because, you know, RuPaul's Drag Race is a good show. It's an Emmy Award-winning show. It's a very well-produced show. And obviously, RuPaul is the head of that, is the face of RuPaul. And in RuPaul's Drag Race, there's always like an acting challenge. And, you know, there's always like a good, in terms of the acting challenge quality, there's always at least one group that has quality acting, like to the point where you might want to see it on a Netflix show. So I was very surprised by Ru's acting. I felt like it was quite mediocre, to be honest. I felt like most of the time it was low energy. I feel like, especially with a comedy, I was expecting a bit more animation. It felt very one level, one note. With Ru's acting, and even with her performances, the performances weren't really sold to me. I just kind of felt like I'd seen better performances from contestants on RuPaul's Drag Race. So I personally was surprised by RuPaul's performance and her acting, and his acting. I thought the acting was going to be better. I was not impressed by the acting. But what did you guys think of, for those of you who have watched it, what did you think of RuPaul's acting? In terms of AJ, I did not like AJ's character, but I don't think that's necessarily the actor's fault. I feel like as an actor, especially a child actor, you know, you do the best with the material you were given. And I feel like the actor who plays her, I believe it's Izzy G, did what she was told and did the best with the material. But I feel like this, you know, whiny, loud, bad-mouthed child trope is overdone. Is extremely overdone, and it's just like I've seen it so many times before, and it was literally just one note. It was just she's just ingrained in my mind as this annoying loud character. I got to the point where it's just like I don't actually want to see, like it felt like I was trapped in that RV van with her. It was it got to the point where it felt like I was trapped in this RV van with her and I wanted to get out of the RV van. But obviously I'm watching this to review it. And then also the tantrums, you know, it's been a long time since I've been 10. I was 10, 12 years ago. But I can't, maybe, you know what, I had parents and my parents were not drug addicts. You know, I had a roof over my head, I had food in my stomach. I never had to be doing all of this stuff that she had to be doing. But in terms of the tantrums that she had, 10 years old, I feel like at 10, I feel like tantrums are something like from age 7, you know, I have seen 10-year-olds have tantrums. It's not like I haven't seen 10-year-olds have tantrums. But I just feel like for someone in her situation, tantrums do not seem realistic to me. And the intent of the tantrum, it was like a 5-year-old child tantrum. It wasn't even like a 10-year-old child tantrum. Like the screaming, I just didn't get it. I didn't get the tantrums. But let me know what you think. Is there anyone watching this with a 10-year-old child that the tantrums seem realistic, or, you know, can remember when they were 10? I didn't well out like that. But yeah, that was very strange. But what I will say is that I did like the scenes with AJ when she was getting her hustle on, when they were getting their hustle on with the hot dogs. That is actually quite a good hustle, you know, pretending somebody like dropped your, you know, pushed into you and dropped your hot dog on the floor and just keep rinsing that out until you like make double or more of the money. That's actually quite a good hustle. And also with the Girl Scout cookies, I did like the kind of element because, you know, she's always hustling for money, but she is very street smart and, you know, she was a hustler. And I feel like it would have been nice to see more of that kind of street hustle than more of the loud, annoying, bad mouth child, because it seemed like she was quite smart. And in my experience, smart children don't behave in the way that she was portrayed. In terms of the characters that I did like Lewis's character, obviously Robert/Ruby's best friend. It took a while for me to warm to it because I felt like in the beginning maybe they were trying too hard. It felt like a bit too theatrical, but I really warmed to Lewis's character and it was very funny, and by the end of it, it seemed a lot more organic. And, you know, I felt like they did play a blind person quite well. I would always prefer to have an actual blind person playing a blind character. But I feel like they did play a blind person quite well, to the point where I was like, oh, they actually aren't blind. Also, Lady Danger. At first I found her quite annoying, but I felt like she actually did play her role quite well, and I felt like she was one of my favorite characters, I think. But I've seen I've had a little peek on Twitter and I've seen some mixed things. Some people saying they didn't like her, some people saying that they did. What did you think of Lady Danger? She was played by Tia Curry, I believe her name is. What did you think of Lady Danger's character? I feel like it's another one where, yes, it could have been better, but I feel like Tia Curry did the best with the material that she could. Obviously, who was it that played Lewis? Michael Woodley, again, one of my favourites. Damien, I'm not sure about his character. I feel like, again, it's kind of overdone. You know, the guy who wants to be perceived as straight, heterosexual, macho man, but is in denial about his sexuality. It's kind of overdone. And then also pertaining their relationship with, you know, Ruby and Damien, that was dragged out. I feel like the flashbacks of their relationship throughout of it was way too much. I feel like 1 or 2 would have been fine, but the flashbacks throughout, it just kind of got to the point like, okay, we get it now. Obviously, Ruby really likes him. You know, he's in denial. He might actually like her. Oh, he does like her. It felt like very predictable. A lot of fantasy, you know, getting, you know, the straight guy to admit that he's actually gay or bi, or that, you know, his sexuality isn't as rigid as he's trying to make out. I feel like storylines like that are overdone. On top of that, it's like always matched with like, and pain with the other character and distress, and then still wanting to have a relationship with them, and then the other guy comes and says, well, you know, I do have feelings for you. I don't find it entertaining. Obviously, at the end, Damien comes back for Ruby and so confesses his feelings for Ruby, but Ruby basically kicks him to the curb. But what do you think? Do we ship their relationship or not? Personally, I don't really care about either character enough, or I didn't grow any emotional attachment or investment in them as a couple to even be like, I ship them or I don't ship them. I really just don't really care. But what do you guys think? To lighten up the mood a bit, my favourite scene was probably the police scene. And that gave me that police, because obviously I felt like the beginning was a bit slow and a bit dry, but that police scene gave me hope when after Ruby came in, you know, told the male police officer what happened. He wasn't very sympathetic, so he asked to speak to a female police officer. That whole kind of skit there, I feel like that was the most entertaining part of the season, and that kind of gave me promise that maybe things would improve. It was the early time I laughed. I found things funny because I feel like there was a lot of jokes scattered around the season, but I don't think they landed. But yeah, let me know what your favourite scenes were. And then also there was various kind of subjects that were brought up in the season, which I wasn't surprised about. I feel like they do that a lot in RuPaul's Drag Race, the reality TV show. And obviously they made, obviously one of the main subjects was kind of showing the vulnerability of old gay men from scammers, especially by, younger men who are kind of looking to take advantage of older gay men who might be lonely, might feel a bit insecure, and, would do anything to keep the company of this shiny new younger man that makes them feel so good about themselves. And, it is quite common as a concept. I felt like that was a good concept, a good idea to insert in the series. And then also a kind of little thing in there was kind of paying back credit cards. And I've actually heard this in real life, but obviously when you're paying back credit cards, it's this, I'm not sure if it's like over if you don't pay a certain amount by a certain amount, or whether they just keep adding interest as you're paying things back. But obviously, if you've maxed out your credit card and have no way of paying that credit card payment back, they're just going to keep charging you while you're trying to pay things back. So basically, it's harder for you to get out of debt when interest keeps being put on your debt. And, I guess, that is capitalism, but it doesn't really make sense, and it is quite cruel. But yeah, I feel like that was an interesting commentary to add into there, because I feel like a lot of, and especially entertainers, a lot of them be maxing out their credit cards and getting into debt to, get the best outfits and all of this stuff. So yeah, there definitely needs to be some reform, but in terms of paying back credit cards, but unfortunately, because we live in a capitalist society, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. I know some credit companies might cut you a break, but some of them just be stingy. Another issue the series brings up is obviously the foster system. Obviously, AJ has run away from that system, and Ruby is trying her best not to, Ruby, when she eventually grows attachment to AJ, doesn't want her to go back into the system, and takes, quite extreme measures to ensure that she doesn't end up back into foster care. At the beginning of the series, she was contemplating doing that. She was contemplating calling CPS. Do you feel like she did the right thing trying to protect her from CPS, or do you feel like she shouldn't have taken on so much responsibility for this child that she doesn't know? For me, I think I would have tried to help the child, but I just feel like the second time, after I tried to help you and now you're breaking into my account and stealing my money after my life savings have been stolen from me, I feel like at that point, I think I would have been likely to have called some type of authority, because it's now to the point where you're probably going to keep coming back to my house now and trying to steal from me. So it's a thing where, what do I do now? Do I not call an authority figure because I don't want this child that I don't know to go into the foster system, which most of the time is not ideal? Or do I want to keep fighting off this child who keeps breaking into my house and stealing my stuff? What would you have done if you were Ruby? It was very clear that this child did not have a family, a reliable family unit. The thing that another subject matter was obviously the drug addict mother, which is AJ's mother is a drug addict, and bad mothers. And at first Ruby is like, I've got to take care of her because AJ's mother is not a good mother and they're better off with me. Even with AJ's mother, there was a lot of prejudgment going on with her and her abilities of mothering. And from what the evidence was presented as, she wasn't the best mother. Perhaps maybe, I'm not sure, maybe it would have been beneficial for AJ to be in foster care. But then at the same time, she's saying, well, the foster care people didn't even let me know that AJ ran away. So it's clear that the foster system is inadequate too. Now mean that strangers can now have authority over you and to say, well, we're going to take your child now because we can take better care of your child than you can because you are a drug addict. The story kind of goes like, oh, parents, children belong with their parents or their mothers, even if they're bad mothers. And I'm still on the fence on whether this is kind of maybe perhaps demonizing drug addict mothers or patronizing them. Drug addiction is a big problem. But, a lot of the time when we are focusing on drug addict mothers, and when we think of drug addict mothers, we usually associate them with working class drug mothers when there were a lot of middle class, upper class functioning drug addicts that have children as well and are looking after children who aren't scrutinized in the same way that working class drug addict mothers are. But perhaps maybe it's because the middle class drug addict mothers and the upper class drug addict mothers are still, providing shelter and food and education for their children. Do you feel like this was a realistic portrayal and perhaps shining a light on drug addict mothers? I'm not really sure, because I feel like with things like this, it doesn't really help people who are drug addicts, because I'm not really sure if the purpose of the inclusion of a drug addict mother was to help drug addict mothers who may or may not be watching, to highlight this to the public, to bring awareness to children of drug addict mothers. I'm not really sure what message they are trying to convey by including this drug addict mother who was also a prostitute, who was struggling to take care of their child. I'm not really sure what the objective was. What do you guys think? I think it was a tad patronizing. I feel like they did make an effort to humanize the mother, but it did feel a bit patronizing. Another thing that I noticed is that I kind of feel like, it was quite critical of sex workers. A lot of the time when they were talking about prostitutes and strippers, it was in a very negative manner. When Ruby questioned AJ about her gender identity, they said they didn't want to be a girl because their prospects were to be, a drug addict, a prostitute, or a stripper. And, instead of defending the sex workers, because I am pro-sex work, I feel like it is a valid job, and I feel like most of the time the argument is they had to do it to survive, when most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time some people would rather be making $300 a night than 50. It's more of like, for every stripper there's an Oprah, there's a Michelle Obama. So I kind of feel like they were kind of shitting on sex workers. That's what I kind of feel like. Obviously, I am aware some people are, don't really view sex work as dignified work. But for those of you who are pro-sex work, or, feel like it's, people should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies, do you feel like the show was kind of shitting on sex work? Do you feel like the show was kind of shitting on sex workers, or no? I feel like it kind of was. Another topic that the show touched on was sexual and gender identity in kids. One with kind of AJ, they said they didn't want to be a girl. They didn't specify why. They didn't really go into detail why. They kind of just mentioned, they kind of just mentioned once, the bad stereotypes that they associate girlhood or womanhood with. But they also said that they didn't want to be a boy. So we're not really giving clarification of whether AJ is non-binary or not. Obviously, there is various debates on whether kids, are old enough to know their own identity or not. When's the right time for them to be able to express or explore their gender identity? And I feel like, the child knows when they know, whether it's 3 or 10, whether it's 3, 6, 10 or 16. I feel like the child knows. Obviously, that one thing with when they went to like an RV camper van thing, and there was like, you know, the generic white Southern family when they all owned guns, but the son had like an interest in dressing up in girls' clothes and dressing up as a girl, and the daddy was not here for it. And Ruby takes it upon herself to go to the dad's RV van and have a conversation with him. And he basically says he understands where Ruby's coming from, but, you know, he can't have his son dressing up as a girl. And then there was this really dramatic thing where the son comes out with a gun and was like, I'm dressing up as a girl, and that's that. It was very idealistic and very unrealistic and very unpromising. I feel like in real life, it wouldn't go down like that. And if anything, the boy would have ended up shot by his father. What do you guys think? Do you feel like it was a positive twist, even though it wasn't necessarily realistic? You know, it was good to put that positive twist in that, maybe give some encouragement to LGBT kids who may not have had conversations with their parents about their sexuality yet? Or do you feel like it is too optimistic? Kind of another commentary that they kind of touch on is kind of protesters who are protesting outside LGBT events. Like, I guess like every year there's always those like extremist Christians that go and like protest and tell the LGBT that, you know, they're going to hell. Stuff like this still happens, even up to this day. Shit like that still happens. You are actually taking the time out of your day to spread hateful comments outside someone's event. You are sad. You are a sad person. And to come from a religion that preaches such love, it's just so hypocritical. I have never understood it. Absolutely never understood it. At the end of the day, these people are going to think whatever they want to think. And yes, people are entitled to their own views, but I think like protesters who protest at these places spreading hate speech should be banned, period. I don't think hate speech should be protected under free speech. I don't think hate speech and free speech are in the same category. I personally don't understand why anyone would think a higher being that's supposed to be all about love would want you to go scream hateful stuff at people. I just don't get it. The thing that I noticed in the show is that almost all of the gay couples were interracial. And I've seen it come up again and again, especially by black gay people, that they don't see enough representation of black gay couples, and that most of the time it is interracial couples. And it's not necessarily to say there is not gay interracial couples, but to the fact where it isn't representative. Obviously, Ruby did have a hookup with a black gay guy, but it wasn't really a romantic relationship. They kept the door open, but I noticed most of the time it was with the gay couples, it was interracial. Like even on the ranch, the gay couple, one guy was white, one guy was Latino, I believe. With Lewis, his guy was white. Do you guys feel like that is just generally how it is in the gay community? Most of the couplings are interracial, or do you feel like that's not necessarily the case? Because in most of the shows that I watch, when there is a gay couple, it usually is interracial. The theory is either the people who are writing it are in interracial relationships, so therefore want to see that represented on TV, or it's two birds in one stone. We can have a black gay character and we can have a white gay character. We can't be asked to find two separate partners for them, so what we will do, we'll make them a couple. That is my theories. Another thing, is that when they went to go see like the black drag queens, so Latrice, the drag queens that were playing Latrice Royale and Monique Hart, I don't know why suddenly now it's a twerk club. And, you know, they're doing illegal business, they're doing illegal counterfeit stuff to fund their club, and they're having cookouts with, you know, generic high energy hip hop music, and they're twerking. I don't know what the hell was going on and what was going on in the writer's room when they wrote that scene, because I've been to a lot of black drag shows and they don't just get on the stage and twerk. That's not what happens. I just feel like that was a missed chance to have some proper choreographed black drag queens performing, because most of the time there is more choreography than that. So I'm side-eyeing that scene a lot. Then also, did anyone else peep when he was in the hospital? I think it was in a hospital in Dallas, and some white woman must have asked him about her daughter dating some black guy and how she thinks that he's bad news, and whether Ruby could look at the picture and judge for her. And then Ruby looked at the picture, and the guy and the boy, who was black, of course, who had like natural hair, I think it was in like a twist out, and he had a grey hoodie, and he was like, yeah, he looks like bad news, they should break up. And I'm just like, what? Because to me, the boyfriend in the picture just looked like a normal black teenager. So I just don't know what's going on. I just want to know who hurt Rupaul's feelings, because that was just so unnecessary. To me, I don't think that was tongue in the cheek. I don't think that was a joke. I think that was Rupaul being very petty, because I know he's been called out a lot by the black community in terms of representation. Shake my head. That is another side eye from me. Also, yeah, did any of you guys catch that comment made by the character who was played by Jinx Monsoon when she was like, I've never met a child before who's the top? What? Sorry? Huh? Is that what we're doing now? Making sexual innuendos about a child? Put it in the bin. I would like to know who was responsible for that line in the script and why they thought that was okay. Also, one thing that I just had to point out, even though I've pointed out like 100 other things, but one thing that I felt like was the most problematic thing in the show, which I have seen in other shows, is there's always this thing. So basically the incident between Lady Danger and Damien, where she basically coerces him into sex. Basically Black says, she's going to snitch on him if he doesn't have sex with her. And I feel like I've seen that a lot in terms of the women coercing a man into sex in TV shows, and the way that they portray it is never really seen. It's never generally portrayed as, a predatory action or a coercive action or, an action that's within the realms of sexual assault. And I feel like it's no different than these directors who are telling these actresses, if you want the lead role, you have to sleep with me. I feel like it's the same thing, and I keep seeing it over again, and I feel like perhaps it's maybe glamorizing it or making it into kind of like a fantasy sex thing. But I think it's disgusting. Does anyone else feel the same, or do you feel like it's a kind of false equivalence there? Or do you feel like there is this double standard going on? So moving on, in terms of the score, again, I hate to be so negative, I really do, but the score was very generic. And the score was very generic. It kind of switched between the kind of generic clubby drag bag beat, and then the very cheesy, sad violin score. And sometimes it didn't really match up. So like there was the scene where they were riding the horses in the countryside, and all of a sudden in the back there's the kind of the clubby music, and I'm just like, but they're outside in the nature, in the country. Where is the country music score? I just feel like the score was overall very lazy, and I feel like they had the resources to make a better score. But yeah, to liven it up a bit before I get back to the critiques, is that the cinematography was pretty good, especially when the performance shots, it kind of had this kind of old Hollywood look to it, which I really liked. I really liked that cinematography. But yeah, back to the criticism. Overall, I feel like I say this a lot, but the thing is, the series was too long, but I don't necessarily think it's that they needed to cut things down. I feel like the script was underdeveloped and that they were just dragging it. They were like, we need to squeeze as much as we need to make this episode 50 minutes. So we need to come together and write a script that is 50 minutes. But most of it felt quite underdeveloped. It was very performance heavy, but the performances that were included in it, most of it was very lackluster. The early performance that I liked was Lewis's performance at the end, at the pageant. Obviously, there was loads of cameos by drag queens, I guess, to kind of bring in the kind of RuPaul's Drag Race crowd. But I don't think that that was enough to uplift the season or to make it engaging or entertaining. Overall, the writing was very simple. It wasn't very engaging. It wasn't very entertaining. There was no twist. There wasn't really any twist or turns because you saw everything coming. You saw everything coming. At the point, I'm not really sure if I could call it predictable because it was something more intense than predictable because you just saw everything coming. Nothing was a surprise. Nothing was a surprise. Nothing was gripping. It just didn't feel realistic. I'm not sure. In terms of watching it, it was very hard to get through the 10 hours. Very hard to get through. I feel like it's one of those ones where you could use it as background. If you're doing work, you could use it as background. It's not something that I think that you would sit down and binge. Like I said before, I'm not sure if it will go down well with younger audiences. I think maybe older audiences, I'm thinking 30-ish plus. That's what I'm kind of thinking the target audience with, which might enjoy it better than I did. This is kind of another show that I wouldn't mind if it got cancelled. But if it is to be renewed, it needs to bring on more writers. Definitely needs to bring on new writers. It needs to bring in more writers. If the writers that wrote this seasons are going to be involved, and they need to bring in new, fresh writers. But I'm not sure if I'd want to see another season, if I'd want to put myself through another 10 hours. So overall, I'm going to have to give it a 2 out of 5. I just feel like it was barely average, I think. It got boring. It got boring very fast. And like I said, I didn't find it entertaining. But let me know what you think. Did anyone actually enjoy it? And if you did enjoy it, and why did you enjoy it? What were the enjoyable moments for you? But yeah, let me know what you thought of the season. Let me know what you thought of this podcast/video. Let me know what you think about this new video. Let me know what you think about this new format. But yep, subscribe if you haven't yet. Until next time, guys. Bye.